You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off you. You'll be like heaven to touch. I wanna hold you so much. At last, long love has arrived, and I thank God I'm alive. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. Pardon the way that I stare. There's nothing else to compare. The sight of you leaves me weak. There are no words left to speak. But if you feel like I feel, please let me know that it's real. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. I love you, baby, and if it's quite alright, I need you, baby, to warm my lonely nights. I love you, baby, trust in me when I say, oh pretty baby, don't bring me down, I pray. Oh pretty baby, now that I found you, stay and let me love you, baby, let me love you. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. You'll be like heaven to touch. I wanna hold you so much. At last, long love has arrived, and I thank God I'm alive. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. I love you, baby, and if it's quite alright.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Kevin Carver, and that intro was a little bit longer than I thought it was going to be, but I had so many good photos I wanted to share, so I thought it was appropriate. Just like the intro, the video is going to be a little bit on the long side, but I have a lot to say, so just stick with me. So I originally wanted to title the video Why I Sold My X100V, but I thought about it a little more, and this is really a video about film photography. So I wanted film to be in the title. But to start off, I think I need to mention that camera first. So I primarily shoot Fuji for digital, and I bought that camera just as something to always have on me and, take pictures of my friends, my family, and those everyday life moments. And I love that camera. It was everything I wanted it to be. But I found out I was using it way too much, and I left my other interchangeable lens cameras at home, and all my lenses and everything were just collecting dust, and I felt it was making me a little bit lazy almost too. So I got rid of it. So I replaced it with this here, a Minolta CLE, a real rangefinder camera, 35mm film, and it's actually a little bit smaller than the Fujifilm X100V. And if I need something a little bit more small, I picked this thing up a little bit later. 35mm point and shoot. 35mm f2.8 lens on it, super sharp rangefinder as well. Olympus XA, fits right in your pocket. Of course I didn't pull the plug on these cameras right away. They're kind of expensive for 35mm film cameras, but I've dabbled with film a little bit in the past. I've always had a Canon AE-1 program, but I never used it that much because I thought the quality was far inferior to my Fujifilm digital cameras, or so I thought. So I kind of just want to share with you now what I learned that changed my mind, and maybe I can convince you to start shooting a little bit more film. First of all, the way that I do it, and the way that you probably should too, is I don't work analog the whole way through. There's a point where my film negatives are digitally scanned, and I make them into a digital file so I can edit them digitally, share them digitally, and eventually print from the digital file. The other way to do it would be to work analog the whole way through, and work with an enlarger in a darkroom with light sensitive paper. And that's really cool, but in my opinion, it's very outdated and not very useful in today's world, and it wasn't very fun either when I did it, so I probably wouldn't want to ever do that again. I like editing my pictures in Photoshop rather than trying to edit them on an enlarger with burning and dodging that way. I bring this up because the quality of your film pictures is highly dependent on the way that you scan them. If you're only getting your pictures developed and scanned from like Walmart or CVS or Walgreens or something like that, you don't really know what your camera and your film is capable of. There's such thing as a high quality professional scanner, and I don't know if Walmart or CVS or Walgreens uses them, and if they do a very, very poor job with it. Scanning film with one of these scanners isn't something that everyone can do, especially at a fast pace. It requires a technician that kind of knows how to use it correctly to get the right colors and everything. So I highly recommend sending your film out to a lab because of that. When you send your film out to a lab, they're probably either using like a Noritsu or a Fujifilm scanner that cost like a lot of money, like at least $5,000. And I don't really have that kind of money to toss at a scanner. And it's not only that, but the whole other equipment that is required of you to use these isn't really that cheap either. So I like to send it out to a lab, and usually you're going to get around 20 megapixels, 20, sometimes 30 depending on the scanner for 35mm scans. And they're very, very sharp and very comparable to digital, especially if you're using like low ISO film, like maybe 100 film or 160 film. You're going to get very, very good quality. You're also going to get more consistent looking photos if you send it and mail it to a lab rather than doing it yourself, because when you do it yourself, there's always going to be variables in the timing and the temperatures of the chemicals that you're using. And I find that when you send it to a lab, even though it does cost a bit of money, it ranges, if you want high quality scans, $17 to $20 a roll, it's worth it in my opinion. If the mailing part turns you off, I can assure you that once you get into the hang of it, it's really, really easy and quick. You just walk over to the local post office, put your film in a little padded envelope they usually have up there, write the name of the lab you're sending it to, and only takes a few minutes. Once you get into the hang of it, it gets super, super easy. You just go there maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks to send your film out. And it's not really that bad doing that. So once again, probably the biggest thing, if you're not sending your film out to a professional lab to get it developed and to get it scanned, if you're only sending it to Walmart or CVS or Walgreens or something like that, you're not really getting the full potential, and you're not getting the full quality of your negatives. So I kind of touched on it before, but another reason to start shooting film is cheap full frame cameras and bodies that just are not possible in digital. I mean, look how small this XA is. It's absolutely tiny. It's full frame in the palm of your hand. Just slip it in your pocket, and the lens is great quality. I'm going to put up a couple pictures here that were specifically taken with that camera. And I think they're pretty good. Something that I would approve of, something that is up to my standards. And I think a lot of people agree, especially if you're shooting low ISO film, like I said. Another reason is affordable medium format. You're not going to be paying $5,000, $10,000 for a camera, and you're not going to be paying, another $2,000, $4,000 for a lens. These cameras autofocus, even small ones like the XA. This one doesn't autofocus, but you can buy point and shoots that do. And the medium formats autofocus too. They can be used professionally. And as long as you take care of them, you'll never need to spend the money to upgrade to a new one, because it's not like they're coming out with new film cameras. It's not like the tech is getting any better. There's some really high-tech film cameras out there that you can get that record EXIF data and that have all kinds of metering modes and shoot 8 frames a second. But you don't really need that, because if in my opinion, when you're shooting film, you're not really doing it to shoot sports. You're doing it to shoot those moments. You're doing it to shoot portraits. And that's where film really, really shines. Film camera value is also only going up. Digital cameras, when you buy them after a few years, the value goes down. And the value goes down because new technology is always being released, and people, you buy a camera and then 2 or 3 years later, it's like not even the latest technology anymore. But film cameras, if you take care of them, they'll last you forever. I find that this also makes the film camera community care more about pictures, in the actual photographs than about gear. And to me, that really matters a whole lot. Even though I love gear and I think it's really cool and fun to use, and I have a little camera collection and I love cameras, but to me, I love cameras because they take pictures. I don't love cameras just because they're cameras. So they're all very unique. Another cool thing about film cameras is that they're so different from each other. Digital cameras are really kind of all the same, but film cameras, they work in so many different ways. So even though you can get gas with digital gear, and you definitely can get gas with film gear, the gas with film gear acquisition syndrome, by the way, the gas with film gear is a little bit less expensive to kind of quench your gear acquisition syndrome if you do get that. But really, you know, spending a couple $100s for a camera isn't like spending $1,000, $2,000 for a new film or digital camera. So that's kind of where it really shines too. Moving on with film, another big thing is you only have a set number of shots before you have to change the rollout and pay X amount to get another roll developed. You can see that as a disadvantage, or you can look at it like this. You'll only take good photos because you can't just snap away and be lazy. If you want the shot, you go get the shot instead of half-assing the shot and later knowing you could have done better. You might think, well, I can not half-ass the shot if I shoot digital too. But let me tell you, I've been shooting photography, I've been doing photography for about 10 years now, and I consider myself to be pretty decent. But as it turns out, the better you are at something, the more caught up with your ego you become with it. And as it turns out, you also become more lazy while doing it, and you kind of rely on your instinct while you're shooting, and you don't even think about it. You just shoot on instinct. Film doesn't force you to be more deliberate, but it highly encourages you to, because every shot costs money. When you go take a film picture, you're going to be really examining the entire frame before you take it, especially when you first start out. And when you get a little bit better, you'll find yourself taking pictures a lot faster, kind of like you did with digital, but you're going to have a reformed sense of awareness with every single picture. And it's kind of like almost learning photography all over again. And it can really teach you a lot of new things that maybe you've never tried before, you've never done before, and you start taking pictures that you've never taken before. Okay, so you've gained a reformed sense of awareness from shooting film, and it's time to go back to digital, right? I don't think most people that get to this point are going to be really asking that question, because they're going to realize that shooting film is just way more fun and is actually a superior medium in almost every way. There are a few things where digital really kicks analog's ass, and like badly, but I kind of want to go over the reasons why film is better now. And of course I'm going to go over the disadvantages too, but hear me out. Don't know if your photo is good enough to upload? If it was shot on film, it probably already is good enough, because it's probably already the best you could have done, or near the best you could have done. And even if you still don't think that it's good enough, then so what? It's still shot on film, the colors are still pleasing, it already has a nice aesthetic, and the aesthetic that you get with film, almost everywhere, digital always tries to imitate it. But it can only imitate it. It can never be the real thing. People always try to find the latest preset that gives you the coolest looking film look to your picture. And you can do that, or you can just shoot film. But more importantly, film photos don't have to be perfect to be good. And this is gonna rock a lot of boats, but I think that digital photos need to be held to a higher standard than film photos, because you only had 10 seconds plus however many seconds you had to get that shot, plus whatever you can fix in the raw file. And the resolution of digital photos is so fine that even if you're off focus by just a little bit, it ruins the entire photo. But with film, it just has a tendency to, even if you missed focus by like half an inch or an inch, you know, the picture still kind of comes out all right. Just for some reason, I don't know exactly why. It has something to do with the film, I read it somewhere. But with digital, you know, you gotta get the picture perfect, because there's no excuses. And with film, there's no excuses, but it's a different medium. You can't really compare them to each other, you know? I look at it like, you can't compare color pencil to crayon to acrylic paint, you know? And you kind of can't compare a phone photography to digital professional photography either. Everything is kind of in its own realm. And film, it cannot be compared because it's just simply different. And it has different parameters because of that. So moving on, probably my favorite advantage to shooting film is you get to live in the moment and cherish it. And then cherish it again later when you finally see your photos. There's nothing more exciting than getting your scans back and seeing all the banger photos you took for the first time. If you feel like you need some instant results in your photography, you can always whip out your phone and get a quick shareable digital photo. And Phone photos are pretty good nowadays, you know. Like I said earlier, they kind of have their own bracket of standards, and you can get some pretty great photos shooting with a phone. As long as you turn off all that fake bokeh and ugly HDR stuff, the photos out of your phone are very, very good and can be very useful when shooting alongside film to get that digital photo that you just want to share right away. Touching more on the whole living in the moment thing, once you take your film photography to the next level, you can start shooting film on vacations, and you'll be, you know, spending time taking pictures, but more importantly, you won't be spending time sitting at the computer in the hotel room every single night editing those pictures and, you know, getting the right ones because you want to share them instantly. You'll get to spend more time with the friends and the family that you're there to spend time with on vacation. And you take the photos when you take the photos, and then you can look at them later and you deal with them later and you enjoy your vacation now. So the last but not least point I have for film has to do with storage, organization, and hard drive space. My least favorite thing about digital photography is going back afterwards after a shoot and sorting through hundreds, sometimes thousands of photos just to pick the ones that I think are best. And most of them are so similar anyways to each other to where if I picked one over the other, you know, if I was shooting 5 or 8 frames a second, they both would be just as good, and somebody looking at them would never be like, oh, if her face was turned just a little bit more this way, it'd be so much better. And no one ever thinks that. You know, you're sorting through hundreds of photos for no reason. When I go and I pick all my final photos after a digital shoot, it's often not more than 36, almost never more than 36, you know? And so, do you have 36 pictures on an exposure on a roll of film anyway? Do you really need more than 36? And if you do you need more than, what is 36 times 2? 72? Right? What's 36 times 2?
36 times 2 is 72.
When I get my scans back from the lab, they're in a folder with the lab order number. And then inside of that folder, there are subfolders with each roll that I shot. And for organization, I simply just drag the main folder onto my external hard drive and voila, organized. You know, of course you can always rename all the folders too if you want to get even more precise with that. But with film, you're not taking thousands of photos, you know, I feel like that's not really necessary. You can just look at the date when you ordered them and you'll be fine. Also, you'll almost never have to delete a film photo you took. You have solid negatives when you get them back and you can put them in a sleeve and keep them for later, but the actual digital file, you don't need to delete. There's no reason to. You can store almost your entire life's work, pretty much. I'm pretty sure you could on a 1 terabyte external hard drive. You'll never have to choose between formatting your memory card and deleting all the raw files you took, or moving them onto a hard drive to save them for later because maybe you'll want to do something with them later, or maybe you'll want to look at them later, but you can never look at them later because you'll never want to. You have to open up an external, a third-party program to even view the raw files. So it can come in handy to have them for later, but in my opinion, it's just so much of a hassle, you know, thinking about what you want to do with your photos and buying extra storage. You know, I just have a Samsung 1 terabyte external SSD for everything, and oh my God, I'm not even close to filling it up. Also, in my opinion, really the only advantage to RAW files is when you want to push the exposure, like after you've already messed up the exposure, or you want to bring back highlights or shadows to get some type of HDR look, which in my opinion rarely ever looks good, or you want to push the colors to something that don't look natural, which also I'm not typically a fan of. And if you are, whatever, more power to you, but that just isn't something I'm interested in doing. You know, the colors that you do on film are dependent on the film stock that you choose and the way that you scan them. And I feel like that, and you can get a great amount of dynamic range if you expose it right. And I feel like that is a much more kind of fun way to do things than sitting in Lightroom and messing around with all the colors and just throwing on a preset, you know. With film, you choose your preset when you choose your film stock. And that's a really fun thing to have. With all that being said, I think digital definitely, obviously, still has a place in today's world. It is really good when you need to shoot a lot of pictures. When you're shooting sports, I would not want to shoot film on sports. There's no reason to. Digital does that better and more efficiently. And if you want to do like a wedding or something, you can do it on film. But it's honestly, I wouldn't want to do that on film. I'd shoot it on digital because you're just taking way too many photos and the cost of developing them would take away from your profit. And also, film you can scan pretty good up to 20 megapixels, but digital blows it away with the resolution. If you want to print bigger, if you want to print bigger than like an 8x10 or a 16x20, you're going to want to shoot digital. And I'm only talking here with 35 millimeter. You can blow medium format 645 up to poster size if you want to, and when you're shooting large format, those are 300. You can get a 300, 400 megapixel drum scan out of that, and it's a lot of fun. But digital still kind of wins in overall resolution, in my opinion. Not only that, but if you're shooting in low light situations, digital crushes film too. It can bring out the shadow areas. There's so much latitude with the shadows. Yeah, latitude with the shadows that you get when shooting digital. You can shoot some cameras in complete darkness, but film loves light. You want to be shooting film outdoors or in strong window light mostly. But those are 3 situations: sports, events, low light, resolution. Maybe they're 3 important ones to you, but for me, I like to shoot outside in the sun. I like my storage space. I like actually getting to cherish the pictures and hold on to a physical copy of the actual thing that I shot. And I don't have to worry about, storage. And I said that a bunch of times, but when I say it this time, I mean, I can pass on a notebook full of pictures that I took to somebody, and those are the pictures. It's not like passing over like 10, 20, 30 hard drives to your kids. You can give them a binder. How cool is it to actually have a physical copy of your art, to hold your art in your hand? Most people nowadays, they don't even print their art. They just put it on Instagram, and I think that's kind of sad. But in the cases where you aren't shooting low light, or you don't need high resolution to print above, let's say, a 16x20, and you're not shooting sports or you're not shooting a wedding, why not shoot film? You can have a tangible copy of your photo that you can hold in your hands, that I feel like a lot of people are missing nowadays. Art, like digital photography, is kind of the equivalent to digital art, and digital artists are really, really good, but most of the time, they can also paint. And which one do you think is cooler, a painting or digital art? I'm not trying to down anybody here that does digital art, but to me, paint and something real that you can hold in your hand is a lot more cooler of an art form. That's just me. Something else I want to say is that film, even though a lot of people say it, it is not good to learn on whatsoever. You'll learn exponentially faster on digital, and you'll actually learn from your mistakes. On film, sometimes you have to wait so long from a mistake that you make that you forget what you even did to make that mistake to begin with. In my opinion, film is really, really fun and better when you transition to it from digital. I know that's kind of only might apply to like a younger generation of people, but after you kind of already developed a style in digital photography, I feel like film is kind of an upgrade from that, because the mistakes that you make do cost money, and the overall look that you get from your pictures is the aesthetic that you most likely kind of would want anyway from a picture. It's a very tangible, very real aesthetic to the photos. Going back to the cost of film, yeah, that is a disadvantage, but you can look at it like this, the way that I do. The cost of my film and the cost of developing is the same that an artist would have to pay for the cost of their materials, their paint, and their canvas. Because that is what an analog art form is, You have to pay to create things. If you don't already own a film camera and you want to start out with something, I would suggest going with an autofocus SLR, kind of like a Canon or Nikon. You can also get a rangefinder too, if you're into that and have a little bit more money. Manual focus SLRs are, they're cheap and they're affordable cameras to start off with, but a lot of the times, they're older and they can have more problems. You don't want to have problems with a camera when you're first starting out, because then it just inhibits you from, actually taking the pictures, and problems on film cost money. So you want a newer camera, definitely. And with manual focus, I feel like it can be rewarding when you nail it, but most of the time, it just isn't fun to do in practice. It's fun on a rangefinder camera for some reason, but when you're manually focusing an SLR, You know, you got to go back through the focus and come back just to make sure, and then eventually pinpoint your focus if you actually want to get your picture perfect. Why would you want to do that instead of just holding a button halfway down and having the autofocus do it for you? Makes no sense to me. You're going to be able to capture the moments that you want to capture. Your camera's not going to be aesthetic, like an 81, not going to be aesthetic enough for some people, but in my opinion, it's well worth it to get an autofocus camera. If you shoot Canon, a good cheap option, which you can usually find under $100, is a Canon A2E. You can use all your existing EF lenses, there's no problem at all. And that camera does everything. Has a shutter that goes up to 1/8,000th of a second. It's a little plasticky in build, but it's a great camera, and it even has some cool like eye AF detection where it can look at the autofocus point you're looking at in the viewfinder and it switches to that one. If you shoot Nikon, I highly recommend getting one of these here. This is F100. It's kind of a cheap, I mean, it's more expensive than the A2E, but as far as autofocus Nikons go, you can get cheaper ones, but you can also get much more. My mind is really dark right now. There we go. It's the end of the video and I just noticed that. But you can also get much more expensive ones, and the F100 is really a very modern film camera that will literally do it all. Everything that you need. The only thing is that it won't work with the newest Nikon lenses, but you can put any autofocus, like one of the older ones. It doesn't work, I think, with the electronic aperture line, which is only the latest ones they just came out with on the F-mount. But other than that, you can get some awesome autofocus Nikon lenses for it that even have a image stabilization that work perfectly. And the film, the advanced, is very smooth, and it's a great camera. I recommend. I'm probably going to do a review on it at some point, but I just cannot recommend that camera enough. Great camera. If you're shooting Sony, I'm so sorry. And not because there aren't any Sony E-mount cameras that you can get. So that's all the points that I wanted to make on film today. I really hope that this video might inspire you to try film or inspire you to shoot more of it, because honestly, it changed my perspective on what I think photography is and, you know, the meaning behind photography. The pictures that I used to take on digital, I was so fixated on, you know, a specific type of look and a specific type of picture that I kind of, you know, lost the whole creativity thing in it. Film is a genuine way to do things in photography, and it's not like old technology. It is just the analog way to do it. You know, kind of like comparing digital art to real art with paint. So that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you have a good day, good night, good life. Thank you for watching, everyone. See ya.